This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Your hosts are Seth Jacobson and Patrick Heiler.
Chapter 41, A Hunter's Oath, and our symbol is the wolf. It's a parent chapter.
Definitely a parent chapter. More of a Fael chapter, really.
Yeah, kinda.
I mean, the Hunter's Oath is her. She swears on her Hunter's Oath to do what Moraine says.
I love that scene. As the snow goose moved toward the long stone docks of Ilion, sails furled and propelled by its sweeps, Perrin stood near the stern watching great numbers of long-legged birds wading in the tall marsh grass that but encircled the great harbor. He recognized the small white cranes, and could guess at their much larger blue brothers, but many of the crested birds, red-feathered or rosy, some with flat bills broader than a duck's, he did not know at all. A dozen sorts of gulls swooped and soared above the harbor itself, and a blackbird with a long, sharp beak skimmed just above the water, its underbeak cutting a furrow. Ships 3 and 4 times as long as the snow goose lay anchored across the expanse of the harbor, waiting their turns at the docks, or for the tides to shift so they could sail beyond the long breakwater. Small fishing boats worked close to the marsh, and in the creeks winding through it. 2 or 3 men in each, dragging nets on long poles, swung out from either side of the boat. The wind carried a sharp scent of salt, and did little to break the heat. The sun stood well over halfway down to the horizon, but it seemed like noon. The air felt damp. It was the only way he could think of it. Damp. His nose caught the smell of fresh fish from the boats, of old fish and mud from the marsh, and the sour stink of a large tanning yard that lay on a treeless island in the marsh grass.
I always think of this city as Venice, in the way it looks, with the canals and the boats and the heat and all of that.
Pretty much. Like big series of islands. Well, sort of. It's just like cut, crisscrossed by canals, and there are all these like low islands. And
isn't it basically in a river delta?
Yes. And now that the map has fallen out of this copy of the book, I can just leave that.
Oh, your book's falling apart because the bindings aren't very good? It's shocking.
This happens every time I get 3/4 of the way through a paperback. Where many large rivers gather together and in the north of Ilion turn into one river that heads south down a peninsula.
And they've been traveling down the Arnon?
Manetherindrel?
Oh, the Manetherindrel?
Bambi agrees. Let's go with it.
Yes. And then they're going to travel across the coast to get from Ilion to Tyr, which is where Rand's going, but he's taking the overland route.
Right. The boat will be faster.
Definitely.
So Moraine wants to get there before him.
And just be waiting for him, basically.
Is the idea. Although she's said that she'll chase him no matter what. It's a lot of observations from Perrin's, which are kind of fun, but also, sort of an aside. I just kind of highlighted, he's like staring at these islands where there are leather tanneries, and he notes that they probably made more leather in a day than was made in Emmonsfield in months.
And I think part of the reason he's, standing at the ship looking out is because of all the tension on the boat that he's trying to ignore.
Yes.
Because there's clearly, there's been shouting matches going on between Fael and Moraine and Fael and Perrin, and Lan's sort of mocking the whole thing with a smile. And so the sailors are, tiptoeing around and, whispering, take in the rope. Okay. There's just, everyone's on eggshells, and they're get off my ship.
I'm imagining Moraine just staring at the front of the boat, staring at Ilion quietly all day.
And it's boiling hot, and Loyal's so sensitive to the emotions going on that he just stays in the stifling cabin where there's no airflow whatsoever. It's got to be 110 degrees down there, and he's sitting there in his wool coat just sweating.
It's okay, I'll just read in this hot box. It's fine.
It's good.
It's nicer down here.
I'm just gonna reread my notes.
Her cold, dark stare had taken on a quality that made him feel as if he had been packed in a barrel of snow in the dead of winter. The Aes Sedai said nothing, but she stared too often and too hard for any comfort.
Little cold, little chilly. Cold shoulder, maybe? Here, Moraine is wearing a fine wool cloak. And it doesn't bother her because she's using the Aes Sedai trick of not sweating.
Right. Why do you think she's wearing the hood and cloak? She does it when she doesn't want to attract notice, but she knows that everyone knows, and she's pissed.
I think it's just because they're coming into the city.
Ah.
And so she has her hood up because she doesn't want to be recognized as they go into the city. Because she has that Aes Sedai's face.
Yeah.
You know, as we find out, there's a Forsaken in charge, Samuel in charge of the city.
Right.
And so she's got good reason to try and hide her face from being recognized. I don't know if she knows there's a Forsaken there, but...
I don't think she knows yet, but, you know, what becomes evident in the next chapter, that all three of the boys are being hunted now. Zareen met each Aes Sedai look with a smile, but every time Moraine turned away, she swallowed and wiped her forehead.
Not just sweating from the heat there.
No, she's sweating from the heat.
Yeah.
The heat of silence.
Because Moraine does not want Fael to be following them.
No.
And once you found out that Fael has decided just to tag along on her own, she was kind of pissed.
The more, like, links in her chain, the way she sees it, are the more weak links that there could be. And, you know, someone that could accidentally reveal her plans to the wrong person, or, you know, she's sure that they're being followed and spied on and hunted.
There's another explanation as well. Moraine is deliberately being cold and mean to Fael to try and drive her off. She's attempting to verify that this is Perrin's Falcon. And if Min has that viewing, nothing
Falcon.
she's going to do is drive her off.
Yeah.
And she says, well, I did my best to drive her off. Looks like we're stuck with her. Like, it's definitely as much a test as it is anything else. Moraine never stops testing.
That's a good point. And she does eventually come to that conclusion. At the end of this chapter, she says, well...
Here's your Falcon.
To Varen. It looks like you found your Falcon.
Mm-hmm.
Perrin rather admired her, Fael, for managing that smile when Moraine was watching. It was a good deal more than he could do. He had never seen the Aes Sedai truly lose her temper, but he himself was at the point of wishing she would shout, or rage, or anything but stare at him. Light, maybe not anything. Maybe the stare was bearable.
Think twice about what Aes Sedai can actually do to you before you say anything.
Lan sat farther down the bow than Moraine. His color-shifting cloak was still in the saddlebags at his feet, outwardly absorbed in examining his sword blade, but making little effort to hide his amusement. Sometimes his lips appeared to quirk very close to a smile. Perrin was not certain. At times he thought it was only a shadow. Shadows could make a hammer seem to smile. Each woman obviously thought she was the object of that amusement, but the warder did not appear to mind the tight-lipped frowns he received from both of them.
He finds the whole situation very funny.
And of course he's... I pointed this out one before, but we found out it was actually a mistake in the book. But he's examining his indestructible, like... His indestructible sword blade that, like, there's no reason to look at it ever.
Yeah.
It's the same. It's the same as it was. Like, it's the same as it has been since the breaking of the freaking world.
It's like when you pull out your phone and, like, pretend to scroll something while you're listening to a conversation of the people next to you.
Totally.
That's what Lan's doing. He's pulling out a sword. I'm just going to check my sword over.
I'm not even really ashamed to admit that I do that on the train sometimes.
I love to do it in restaurants.
Listening to someone and, like, kind of paying attention, but I just want to... I'll put my headphones in, or, like, something sketchy happens at the or seems to be happening at the train station. I shut my podcast off, but my headphones are still in.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, and you just stare into the distance. And you just... Yeah.
And you just listen.
Nobody knows. I mean, everyone knows that people do that, but nobody knows if you're doing it or not. It's like sunglasses of the modern era, you know?
Between sunglasses and headphones, you can pretty much do whatever you want on a train. And listen and watch anybody. It's like you have the ability to listen in on a conversation from a distance using the power.
Kind of like that.
Kind of like that.
Except not as cool.
It'd be better if we had a little microphone on our iPhone that we could, like, on our phones that we could point at a conversation and pick up just that conversation. Like a camera, except for sound.
You can pay us for that later, Apple.
I know they have directional microphones. But yeah, there's this whole, like, there's this fight between Lan and Moraine about her sending him to Miriel.
Yeah, I mean, it's not he kind of quips at her when she gets really angry. She, like, catches him smirking.
Right, and that's his tool, to be like, hey, if you're going to send me, I got to laugh.
Better learn to smile now. But if you truly intend to send me to Myrel, I must be used to smiling. I hear that Myrel tells her warders jokes. Gaiden must smile at their bondholder's quips. "You have often given me quips to laugh at, have you not? Perhaps you would rather I stay with you after all." She had given him a look that would have nailed any other man to the mass, but the warder never blinked.
When has she ever given him a quip to laugh at?
I don't know.
Never.
He's like, this is one of the jokes, right?
I want to say he's punishing her for
A little, yeah.
setting this thing up. It's a violation in terms of like sending him off to be with Morel. It's not what the standard procedure is.
Unorthodox.
It's very unorthodox. And as we see, she gets in a lot of trouble for it later. But he's using that as a bit of a...
It is an effort to save his life.
Yeah, it is an effort. But you're betraying our relationship a little bit, so I get to laugh at you a little bit. And I'm not going to be quite as loyal as I would have been.
Too bad. The crew had taken to padding about their work in utter silence when Moraine and Zareen were on the deck together. Captain Adara held his head tilted and looked as if he were listening for something he did not want to hear. He passed his orders in whispers, instead of the shouts he had used at first. Everyone knew Moraine was Aes Sedai now, and everyone knew she was displeased. Perrin had let himself get into one shouting match with Zareen, and he was not sure which of them had said the words Aes Sedai, but the whole crew knew.
Because they shouted it.
I would wish I could say that was the first fight Perrin and Fael had ever gotten into, but it's not.
She likes to push him into shouting.
Yes.
She wants him to react, and because it takes so much antagonism to make him react, they often go to these extremes when they fight.
She likes it.
Totally.
Well, I mean...
Well, she doesn't like that she has to push him that far. You know, she'd like him to stand up for himself a little bit sooner. I think. And that's when he starts doing it right away, I feel like the relationship gets better. But, I mean, come on. You don't say you have never met a couple like that, you know, sometimes they get in fights and they're passionate. And, like, that is also part of the relationship is, like, the passion.
Sure. I feel like that's a pretty standard type.
Yeah. Not in my relationships.
No, not really.
No. I'm no good at fighting. Being passionate without being mean. I feel like that's a skill.
It's not my thing.
No. No, she is not the Falcon. And that is an end to it.
Nope.
Turns out she is. He's just determined to prove she's not.
Ilian comes into sight here shortly after that. After Perrin notes that Loyal only comes onto the deck at night to smoke his pipe when nobody's there.
It's probably nice and cool, too.
Yeah. And there's nobody fighting.
The real important point there.
Perrin sighed and kept his eyes on Ilian. The city the ship was approaching was large, as big as Cairhien or Camelin, the only two great cities he had ever seen. And it reared out of a huge marsh that stretched for miles like a plain of waving grass. Ilian had no walls at all, but it seemed to be all towers and palaces. The buildings were all pale stone, except for some that appeared covered with white plaster, but the stone was white and gray and reddish, and even faint shades of green. Rooftops of tiles sparkled under the sun with 100 different hues. The long docks held many ships, most dwarfing the Snow Goose, and bustled with the loading and unloading of cargo. It's an interesting picture.
In what way?
It's kind of an unusual-looking city. I guess we don't see anything like that in the north. Like, the cities are walled in a kind of traditional, medieval-looking way that we can kind of all conjure up. But this one is, I imagine, defensible because it's in a marsh.
Sure.
Which is not really something you can just march over.
You pretty much have to approach on the roads or
by boat. It kind of struck me as I was reading that it probably wouldn't really need walls to be defensible with all the canals everywhere.
No, crossing canals, all you have to do is knock the bridges down, and all of a sudden you have this incredibly defensible location.
Yeah, so you have these huge towers sticking up out of, sandy islands, basically. Although, I also noticed that there's a ton of marble, which means there must be bedrock around somewhere. Well, it looks like marble when he describes the streak stone of many different colors.
Since they're on the coast, it could also be just an ease of shipping thing, that they're able to ship heavy marble.
Could be.
But yeah, I agree that there's probably quarries not that far away. And with all the waterways, it's not that hard to move heavy stone and marble. I imagine it's a very pretty, like, seagulls and white stone and blue ocean and warm all the time. It's this very...
Think of it as like in the Mediterranean somewhere.
Totally. Well, that's why I keep coming back to Venice as the model for this place. So I know Perrin has a few more wolf dreams, but Hopper just like chases him right out.
Yeah, I kind of forgot about this phase, but for a while Hopper won't even let him into the dream.
He's like, you're too young. Go away.
Idiot. Get out of here.
Yeah. And it's just too dangerous. There's a lot going on in the wolf dream that he needs to, there's Slayer, there's all the Forsaken meeting. He's like, he's only really let him be loose in the wolf dream when he needs to rescue Fael. I feel like that's a transition point where Hopper goes to chase him away and he's like, you'll die. And Perrin's like, I don't care.
Yeah.
If I don't find the Falcon, it's not worth it. And so that's really, I feel, the first time he embraces the world of dreams.
I think he's thinking about that, at least in part. Of course he would be anyway, but at least in part because he doesn't sense any wolves right now, which I suppose is just because they're near such a large city.
He's actually said the range of his ability to sense wolves is only about a mile, maybe a little bit more.
Yeah.
And, when you're in a city, obviously there's more than a mile in every direction of city.
Right.
With no wolves. So I can totally see how he wouldn't be able to sense any wolves within a distance. Although, to me, I know he said a mile, but storyline-wise, I feel like it has to be a little bit more than that.
I thought it was, a bit more than that. Perhaps Ilion was large enough to keep the wolves at bay. They surely would not hunt in those marshes. The snow goose had outrun the wolves that had followed him from the mountains. He reached out for them gingerly now, and felt nothing. A curiously empty feeling, given that it was what he wanted. His dreams had been his own, for the most part, since that first night. Moraine had asked him about them in a cold voice, and he had told the truth. Twice he had found himself in that odd sort of wolf dream, and both times Hopper had appeared chasing him away, telling him he was too young yet, too new. What Moraine made of that, he had no idea. She told him nothing, except to say that he had best be wary. "That's as well by me," he growled. Are you looking for info on that?
Yeah,
question?
I saw one quote that said about a mile.
Yeah.
But I didn't see a reference for it.
And they pull into the dock.
Ogier coming out saying, I'm rereading my notes.
Mm-hmm.
Perrin saying, one of these days I have to see what he's saying about all this. Which I always thought was a bit of a self-referential quote to the books themselves.
Right.
Because I always think of Loyal as the writer of these books.
That's kind of how I imagine it.
Yeah. Oh, one of these days I'll have to read the book you're reading. What? Okay, yeah. And it just twists my head a little bit. And then, Zareen sneaks up behind Perrin and gooses him?
I set this part to read. Something tickled the back of his neck, and he jumped a foot before he realized he was smelling a clean herbal scent through the spices and tar and stinks of the docks. Zareen wiggled her fingers, smiling at them. If I can do that with just a brush of my fingers, farm boy, I wonder how high you would jump if I... He was growing a little tired of considering looks from those dark, tilted eyes. She may be pretty, but she looks at me the way I'd look at a tool I'd never seen before, trying to puzzle out how it was made, and what it was supposed to be used for. Zareen. Moraine's voice was cool but unruffled. I am called Fael, Zareen said firmly, and for a moment, with her bold nose, she did look like a falcon. Zareen, Moraine said firmly, it is time for our ways to part. You will find better hunting elsewhere. And safer. I think not, Zareen said just as firmly. A hunter must follow the trail she sees. And no hunter would ignore the trail you four leave. And I am Fael. She spoiled it a bit by swallowing, but she did not blink as she met Moraine's eyes. Are you certain? Moraine said softly. Are you sure you will not change your mind? Falcon? I will not.
There's that testing.
Yeah.
That was really right there where she's like,
Are you sure?
Are you sure? Like, I've called you Zareen. Like, she is doing everything she can to drive her off.
Just like, look me in the eye and tell me you want to do what I don't want you to do. I will not. There is nothing you or your stone-faced warder can do to stop me. Zareen hesitated, then added slowly as if she had decided to be entirely truthful. At least, there is nothing that you will do that can stop me. I know a little of I, said I. I know for all the stories that there are things you will not do, and I do not believe if Stoneface would do what he must to make me give over. Are you sure enough of that to risk it? Lan spoke quietly, and his face did not change, but Zareen swallowed again.
Oh, he'd totally do what was necessary to put her down if Moraine asked him to. In a heartbeat.
If Moraine was like, throw her off the boat.
She'd be gone.
Yeah. All right.
I mean, he'd probably have to fight off Perrin too at this point, but I did notice she may be pretty, but, and I've noticed in some of the earlier quotes, he's like, I'm not sure if she's pretty. And that's slowly changed in his head from...
It's only been days. I mean.
From, oh, maybe her mouth's a little too big to, how did I ever think her mouth was too big? She's gorgeous, you know.
It's perfect.
Perfect.
You believe you know what an Aes Sedai will not do, do you? She said more softly than before. Her smile was not pleasant. If you wish to go with us, this is what you must do. Lan's eyelids flickered in surprise. The two women stared at each other like falcon and mouse, but Zareen was not the falcon now. You will swear by your hunter's oath to do as I say, to heed me, and not to leave us. Once you know more than you should of what we do, I will not allow you to fall into the wrong hands. Know that, for truth, girl. You will swear to act as one of us, and do nothing that will endanger our purpose. You will ask no questions of where we go, or why. You will be satisfied with what I choose to tell you. All of this you will swear, or you will remain here in Ilion, and you will not leave this marsh until I return to release you, if it takes the rest of your life. That I swear.
I think Lan is honestly surprised that Moraine's letting
his
her
eyes
come along.
flickered. He basically yelled a curse.
He's just like, what?
What the fuck?
And I think it's because she has seen, I'm not sure she has shared Min's vision with Lan, but once she says Falcon, that's when she realizes that this is, or at least admits this is Perrin's Falcon.
Yeah.
Who's going to be along for the ride. I don't think Lan knows that.
Probably. Zareen turned her head uneasily, watching Moraine out of one eye. I may accompany you if I swear? The Aes Sedai nodded.
Once she swears, Moraine touches her forehead.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's anything?
Done, Moraine said, touching the younger woman's forehead right after she says, okay, fine, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Zareen shivered. I think it's with one of her tracking things.
Yeah?
Yeah. The way she keeps track of everyone. Whatever it is that she does.
I mean, I know Zareen shivered, so that might be a reaction to something settling on her, some sort of weave.
I mean, the first thing that popped into my head was one of her tracking things, but she has this binding thing that she uses on people, and binding is a strong word, but whatever she did, with the coins to the boys in the beginning, or...
I always thought that was just, we talked a little bit about, minor compulsion. They should do what she wants, plus tracking.
Right. But I think she's getting more serious and heavy-handed now, and she just, pushes Zareen's forehead, and she's like, now you're mine. Except it's not that strong.
Right.
It's not true compulsion. It's maybe a little, but also the tracking. She wants to know where everyone is all the time.
Alternative theory? Moraine's just fucking with her head. And just you're mine now. Poke.
And she shivers because she doesn't know what's happening.
Yeah, because it's terrifying.
Could be.
It doesn't have to be compulsion or channeling. It could just be mind games.
Like a flick to the forehead. I like that, Bambi.
And then...
Since you brought her to us, Perrin, she is your responsibility. Mine? He yelped. I am no one's responsibility but my own, Zareen nearly shouted. The Aes Sedai went serenely on as if they had never opened their mouths. It seems you had found Min's falcon, Ta'Veren. I have tried to discourage her, but it appears she will perch on your shoulder whatever I do. The pattern weaves a future for you, it seems. Yet remember this. If I must, I will snip your thread from the pattern, and if the girl endangers what must be, you will share her fate.
There's two it seems in that paragraph. That
second
second one
you
should
have found Min's falcon.
Seems like that second one should be cut. Editor, Harriet, get on that.
I think she's accepting in this moment, I guess this is it. When she says, it seems you have found Min's falcon, Ta'Veren. She's not saying, you have found Min's falcon, Ta'Veren. She's saying it looks like it.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's just hedging words. I have Zareen being like, "You're Taviran?"
Yeah.
Oh, that's why the Aes Sedai's interested in you.
Mm-hmm. Her gaze ran over his sturdy country clothes and settled on his yellow eyes. Well, perhaps, wherever you are, she threatens you as easily as she does me. Who is Min? What does she mean I will perch on your shoulder?
And notice then she throws like a ton of questions at him all in a row without giving him a chance to respond to any of them. Who's Min? What does she mean I will perch on your shoulder? You try making me a responsibility, I'll box your ears. Do you hear me?
None of that deserves an answer, he growled.
And this is where he finds out that Min told Moraine about the visions.
Grumbling to himself, he reached down and took Serene by an arm. She gave a squawk and nearly dropped her bundle as he hoisted her up behind his saddle. Those divided skirts of hers made it easy for her to straddle Stepper. Moraine will have to buy you a horse, he muttered. You cannot walk the whole way. You are strong, blacksmith, Zareen said, rubbing her arm, but I am not a piece of iron. She shifted around, stuffing her bundle and her cloak between them. I can buy my own horse, if I need one. The whole way where? Lan was riding off the dock into the city, with Moraine and Loyal behind him. The Ogier looked back at Perrin. No questions, remember? And my name is Perrin, Zareen, not Big Man or Blacksmith or anything else. Perrin. Perrin Ibarra. And mine is Fail, shaggy hair. With something close to a snarl, he booted Stepper after the others. Serene had to throw her arms around his waist to keep from being tossed over the Dun's crupper. He thought she was laughing.
What's a crupper?
Dunno. I just noticed that I have no idea what that word means as I was reading it aloud, even though I read that a couple times recently.
A strap buckled to the back of a saddle and looped under the horse's tail to prevent the saddle or harness from slipping forward. It's like a strap attached, like wrapped around the horse's tail so the saddle doesn't slip around.
Yeah.
It's like part of the strapping down. So basically he boots the horse into movement and forces her to grab him around the waist, which, let me just say, smooth move.
Well, he's annoyed and he doesn't know what's going on, and I wish that he did because she's clearly flirting with him.
Oh, yeah.
It's just so obvious. He's like, quit calling me nicknames, and she's like, she just calls him nicknames some more.
Right.
Damn it.
Well, they play this game, right, that it's always an unspoken contest, and she wants him to call her Fail, and he doesn't want to call her Fail because that's admitting that she's the Falcon from Min's viewing. And so until he calls her Fail, she keeps making up these stupid nicknames for him to hammer home the point that, like, if you don't want to be called a nickname, call me by my name. Yeah. So she's saying, he says, my name is Perrin, not Big Man or Blacksmith or anything else. And she's like, and mine's Fail. Shaggy hair. Whatever I'm not going to call you by that name until you call me Fail.
Yes, Bambi, it's immature and adorable, and the only thing that makes it difficult to watch is that they're both taking it seriously. You know what I mean? I feel like in real life...
Like, come on, guys, kiss and make up, like...
In real life, even grown adults do this kind of thing, but you know that it's not real. It's flirting. It's a game.
Right.
That's true, they are teenagers.
They are. Well, he's 20.
20-year-old boys are 20-year-old boys.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?